Hey guys, this is Mac Tite from eSeduce.com. I hope everyone is excited as I am for this whole interview that I arranged with Jon Sinn about how to improve your conversation skills when talking to women. Now, if you're not familiar with Jon, he's been ranked as one of the top dating coaches in the world for the last few years, and he's also helped thousands of guys get the success with women that they want and deserve through his clear and easy to follow instructions. His latest breakthrough that's been creating a lot of buzz lately is something called the Effortless Conversation System. It's a simple three-step system for effortlessly flirting with any woman. So first, Jon, I want to thank you for taking the time to do this interview and share some of your tips with my readers.
Absolutely, man. I'm glad to do it.
Cool. So Jon, for the guys out there who don't know much about you, can you please give a brief background about how you got into all this?
Sure. So I've been into the whole dating scene for about 10 years now. And basically, I was really bad with girls. I was really shy growing up. I didn't have a lot of friends. I just wasn't social. I didn't get my first girlfriend until I was like 19, and she cheated on me a bunch of times, and I kept taking her back. And eventually that led to me finding some of the pickup boards and just going out doing approaches for about a year, getting some success, but not really. And then I took a boot camp with Mystery about 9 years ago. And from there, I started helping Mystery out. From after that, I taught with him for about 20 or 30 boot camps, and then without him for about another 130-something boot camps over 5 or 6 years. And then in 2008, I broke away and started Sins of Attraction, which is our own company, just because I wasn't really happy with the way that kind of teaching was being handled at the other company, and I wanted to try to help guys a little bit better and on a little more long-term kind of situation, because I think with a lot of guys, they're kind of being marketed this kind of fixed thing, and I wasn't really into that. So I've spent the last 4 years kind of helping guys on my own. I've worked with thousands and thousands of guys, kind of helping any sort of issue that can come up when it comes to meeting, attracting, and dating women. And this effortless conversation system is my latest and kind of simplest, easiest, most basic kind of social skills course for guys who have problems running out of things to say and making connections with like the hot girls they want to date.
So, like you said, this effortless conversation system is all about creating like amazing conversations with women. But like before we get into the basics of the system, what are some of the biggest mistakes that you see guys making when they're talking to women?
So basically, I think it comes down to 4 really big mistakes that I see guys make consistently, which is, number one, they're not prepared. They don't know what their good conversational topics are. They don't know what they should be talking about. They don't know what they should be avoiding. They're just not really prepared for a conversation. The second big problem is that guys are nervous. They're anxious. They have a lot of anxiety. They have like a fight or flight response kicking in. They get scared. They get that deer in the headlights look. And then it's really hard to think about what to say when you're freaking out inside your head. The third thing I see happen with guys is that they get focused on saying the perfect thing. And I blame kind of the pickup and dating community for this, because I think they've kind of established this idea that everything you say has to be really interesting or funny or like turn the girl on, and that's just not how real conversations work. And lastly, I think guys try to do too much. You get a lot of students who try to kind of run before they can walk. They're worried about trying to figure out logistics for same-night lays when they can't even keep a conversation going for 5 minutes. So those are kind of the big major issues, and the solutions are not that difficult. You want to be prepared by knowing your good subjects, knowing how to transition and kind of what to pay attention to. I recommend that all guys make lists of things they're good at talking about, things they like talking about, and things that they know women are interested in, like yoga or fashion, that they could learn more about and use as a conversational subject to kind of talk to women. You also want to know how to transition from topic to topic. Now, in the Effortless Conversation System, I teach 7 or 8 different ways to transition, but the 3 best ways that I like to teach are using observations, which could either be canned or real, using transition phrases, things like check this out, or that's just like when, that reminds me of. Those are all really good transition phrases. Or you can use a question. I know a lot of pickup gurus and dating gurus in general are kind of like question Nazis, and they're like, you can't ever ask girls questions. But I don't believe that. I think that you can ask questions as long as you're not doing what normal guys do, which is going, oh, where are you from? Cool. What do you do? Cool. Instead, you want to use questions to either tease the girl, change subjects, transition, or to bring up a story or a subject that you like talking about. So as long as you're using questions in one of those 3 ways, you're right. Another really big secret is just to pay attention to what works. After you've been doing some approaches, you'll say some things, laugh. Like I have a little line I say where I'll tell girls, like when they're going to the bathroom or they're going to get a drink or something, I'll go, I'll be right here. I'll be the guy who looks like me, and they always laugh. And I just happened one day I said it, and now I use it all the time. But that came from just really organic, and the fact that I pay attention to what gets reactions when I'm talking to girls. The next point, being nervous, you got to be relaxed. Being relaxed makes running out of things to say really a thing of the past, because when you can relax in the middle of a conversation, you're not as nervous, you're not as worried, you're not breathing shallowly. I mean, a lot of guys really understand how anxiety and nervousness affect you physiologically. As you get more and more nervous, you start to breathe shallower and shallower. Well, guess what? Your brain needs oxygen to think. So the less oxygen your brain's getting, the harder it's going to actually be to figure out things to say. So one thing I recommend is learn to breathe correctly and kind of focus on your breath to relax. And that's something that comes from yoga and meditation and stuff like that. But I recommend doing what I call a 15-second breath before you go into your approach. So a 15-second breath just basically means you're going to inhale for 6 seconds, hold your breath for 2, and then exhale for 7 seconds. And that's a really good way to center yourself, get all those nerves out of your head before you walk over to girls. I'll even do that in the middle of conversations sometimes if I'm really blanking, because it helps me relax. The reason guys are nervous is they don't have default things to say. I'm not here to recommend that you have 8 hours of routines, but you should always have a couple of just default things so you don't have to think about it and stress yourself out trying to come up with new stuff, So you should have a default way to start a conversation with a girl if she's by herself or if she's in a group. That's all you need. Guys get really obsessed. I mean, I've seen books with hundreds of openers in them. That's fucking stupid. You need 2 openers. One for when she's by herself and one for when she's in a group. A way to break social comfort, a way to kind of trigger that attraction and get an emotional response. You need a few techniques to establish social comfort, a way to move the girl, and a way to get her phone number. And that's really all you need is defaults. If you have those kind of 5 things, you're going to be way ahead of the game when it comes to knowing what to say. And then letting go of perfection. One of the most common things I've seen over the course of teaching boot camps is guys think they need to say the perfect thing. You have to let go of that. You have to understand that the competition is not the most suave, charismatic motherfuckers in the world. You're not competing against the most interesting man in the world from the Dos Equis commercial. Your competition is the where are you from, what's your name guy. So as long as you're a little more interesting than that, you're doing good. And the last thing is guys trying to do too much. This is a major mistake I see among guys who read a lot and haven't actually been in the field a lot. They think that all of the pickup tactics and techniques are some magical thing and that they can have a really weird conversation, but if they throw enough tactics and techniques in there, then it's going to work. And that just doesn't work in real life. Best case scenario, you become a dancing monkey or entertainment. Worst case scenario, you're creeping girls out when you're trying to do too much. So if you can avoid those 4 things, and there's a lot on how to avoid those in the Effortless Conversation System, you're really well on your way to having good conversations consistently.
Well, that's a lot of great material there. And that's one thing I like about you as a dating coach is that you're not trying to market them some magic bullet. You realize that a lot of these guys who are coming into this have a lot of anxiety issues, whether it be social anxiety or sexual anxiety, and you're trying to address that. And that's what I really admire about you. So after all that, let's jump right into the system, John. So the first step here I see is comfort before attraction. Can you tell us about that?
So step in starting a conversation with a woman is to do it in a way that makes her comfortable socially and allows us to move on to a normal conversation without the woman feeling weird, uncomfortable, hit on. It's one of the reasons that I don't really recommend most guys who are starting out do direct approach. And here's a statistic. I had a student that I worked with who was really obsessed with direct approach. And he did something like 400 approaches without getting laid with direct. And then eventually, after 400 approaches, I was like, okay, the evidence is in. This is not going to work for you. You now get to stop doing this because we've proven it doesn't work. And the reason is being very direct breaks social comfort. It's not something that women are comfortable with right away. It's very bold. It's very kind of in their face, and it's forcing them to make a kind of yes or no decision right away, which people don't want to do. You know, people don't like making decisions. Most people are very indecisive, so they don't want to be forced into a situation, especially from a stranger, where they're all of a sudden having to choose to reject or race someone. So social comfort is really all about making people comfortable first. Our first goal in starting a conversation with any stranger is to build social comfort, because attraction cannot exist without comfort. It's just, that's one of the real reasons that pickup artist guys tend to come off really weird, is you've got a guy who's talking to a girl, you know, maybe he's like a 5'5" Indian guy, and within 30 seconds he's telling the girl they're never going to get along and that he doesn't want to talk to her and that he hates her, and the girl's like, okay, cool, well, bounce then. Like, I don't want to talk to you either, because he didn't make her socially comfortable first. He just went in trying to demonstrate attraction or raise his value and be some kind of like aloof cool guy, but that only works if you are a cool guy. So really, social comfort is the feeling out process. And there's 25 skills to social comfort. I'll just go over them. I'll briefly touch on a couple of them. I talk about this a lot in the program. But they're things like conversational ratio. How much should you be talking? How much should she be talking? How to use questions. You know, I touched on that earlier in this interview. You want to use questions in one of three ways. Things like social questions. There are certain questions that you can ask, like, who are you shopping for if you're talking to a girl in a mall? Or, you know, what's on the agenda for later for tonight if you're in a bar? That are just pure social questions. They're just comfortable questions that anyone's going to be happy to answer, unless they're a complete, like, antisocial asshole. Transitioning between topics we kind of touched on. Talking about yourself. One of the things that I always kind of harp on with my students and guys who are trying to get good at this is this idea that you approach them, they didn't approach you. So the burden of keeping the conversation fun and interesting is on you, not on them. You've got to sell yourself when you're approaching. So you have to talk about yourself. You can't just hope that they're going to give you things to talk about and you can just be this mysterious stranger. Observing, getting good at making observations is one of the best skills you can have for making conversation. Regional references, every city, every little part of a city has different regional things that people know about. Current events. Pacing, interactivity, and check-ins. Another major problem I see with guys who are really focused on the pickup stuff, especially kind of mystery method and more like old school stuff, is they monologue. They talk in like these 5-minute bursts, and nobody has time for that, and nobody gives a shit. Like, nobody's trying to listen to you for 5 minutes in a row when you just started talking to them. They don't care. You've got to keep it interactive and check in by saying things like, you know what I'm talking about? You have been there, right? Like, isn't that crazy? Just things so that they're in the conversation. Grounding yourself, learning how to kind of explain who you are, your personality, and where it came from. Relating, using names. I mean, that's a huge thing. Like, everyone's favorite word is their own name. Talking about your interests in the right way that make them sound fun and cool instead of nerdy. Enthusiasm and positivity. Genuine interest in compliments. I mean, I think generally the issue with compliments is that women know that they're fake. If you can give a woman a genuine compliment, it goes over really well. If you give every woman the same compliment, it goes over like a lead balloon. Self-commentary, being able to talk about the social interaction, especially if it's going bad. You know, if it's going bad, I'll go, oh man, you guys are not into this right now. That's all right. We'll keep going. It just shows a lot of self-awareness. Hooks to open loops, you know, delivery stuff, being able to have unfinished thoughts, being able to tell you about the most important thing for getting comfort, which is role-playing, group dynamics, staying relaxed, being prepared, knowing your presentation, and sharing, not being afraid to share and talk about yourself, which I think is a major problem for a lot of guys. They're like, oh, I don't want to talk about myself, or nobody cares about this stuff. And unfortunately, if you're going to get good at this, you're going to have to learn to make people care.